All right. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to Coastal Conversations with A Better Glynn. My name is John Richards. I'm here with co-founder of A Better Glynn, Shamika Frazier-Sorrells, and team member, Coach Jason Vaughn. And we are going to have a real conversation tonight. It's been a long time coming, ain't it, guys?
Absolutely.
Let me provide some context around this conversation, because I don't want people to think we just randomly having a conversation. But we have, for the past year and some change, been doing a ton of work around equity in Glynn County, in and around Glynn County. And we have seen the fruit of our labor yield some amazing results. But there's always a but, right? But there have been some who have criticized this work of liberation, we call it, equity, some would call it, and have said that we've come too far as a nation, as a country, to still be having this conversation. Now, here's the good news. We got some people on this call tonight who are going to be able to unpack some of that from a historical perspective, from a social perspective. I got some smart people on this team. We got some smart people on this team, and they are joining us tonight. We got the whole team is just a squad of folks that just know what they're talking about. You guys, y'all can put comments in the chat. We can see them, and we will put them on the screen as I just did. What's good, family? That's our cousin, Corey. Good evening. Hey, Corey, how you doing? And if you guys have any comments, questions, or anything, just let us know. And then on the other side of that, make sure you share this with folks, because we're going to get deep tonight and have a really, really robust conversation about oppression and liberation and this idea of freedom fighting. We've been doing some freedom fighting for the past year and some change locally in Glynn County, and we just want to continue to do that. But we also want to take some time to provide some people some historical realities that we might not always acknowledge. So we're going to be starting here really soon, but we wanted to make sure a couple people popped on. Say hello in the chat so we can know y'all can see us, hear us, and all that good stuff. Appreciate you guys for coming through. I'm going to let Shamika and Coach Vaughn chime in here. Y'all doing all right tonight? Shamika, I love your shirt, by the way.
Yeah.
You wearing your freedom gear, ain't you?
I am. And I have very limited shirts that I can fit. So,
My sister Shamika is in the third trimester.
Yes.
And bringing the young freedom fighter into this world. And then Coach Vaughn, he's got the Black Voters Matter shirt on, obviously. So I'm loving the gear in here. Loving the gear in here tonight.
I think Bobby, you represent the Outcast, look like.
Yes, sir. I got the Outcast shirt. Hopefully people know what that is. You know what I'm saying? I might be dating myself, but I had to go with the Outcast. If you don't know who it is and you're too young, ask your mama and them. They'll let you know what's up. They'll let you know what's up. All right, so let's talk about our subject for tonight, because I think that this is going to be super important for folks to realize and recognize that this is something that needs to be talked about for sure. We're going to have a coastal conversation on oppression, liberation, and freedom fighting. Now, this week has been pretty busy in Glynn County. I'm not sure if y'all have noticed on social media, but people have been pretty up in arms about what looks like a racialized incident, or what people would say was a racialized incident in Glynn County. And there have been folks really, really involved in that conversation. And it made some people frustrated to have to continue to explain racism to folks that continue to deny it. So tonight we want to unpack just a little bit of that. All right, let me do this. I'm gonna start here, and Bobby will pop in here in just a second. But Shamika and Jason didn't know I was gonna do this, but I like surprising folks. All right. So tonight we're going to be joined by Bobby Henderson, Shamika Fraser-Sherrills, and Jason Vaughn as participants. I'm just going to be throwing them alley-oops and moderating this conversation because I think it's going to be a good one. Now, I want to start here and look at these three images to help shape our conversation on the front end. Now, based on this map, what city is this? Potomac River, nation's capital.
We good. We know it's DC. We good.
Yeah.
DC. Yep.
Benjamin Banneker, baby.
Yep. Now, let me tell you something about these maps. The colors are racial demographics. Mm-hmm. I went to law school in DC, so this is considered Southeast DC. And out here is actually PG County, which happens to be the wealthiest or one of the wealthiest suburbs in any city in America for African Americans. So here's a natural barrier between African American community here and the red is Caucasian or white community. Right? And then you have some Northeast here that also covers African American community. Now, just like that, here's another city where I have lived, and y'all may have heard a lot of stuff about this place, bad stuff about this place. And this is city on Lake Michigan.
Chicago.
That is Chi-Town, Chicago. All right.
Yeah.
Now y'all hear a lot about the South Side. You see all that blue?
Mm-hmm.
And then the West Side here is also blue. And this is prime real estate in Chicago. The North Side. This is where the Cubs are. This is where the money is. The White Sox are down here. And the Cubs are up here, right? Yeah, so all this lakefront property here, red. Now, interestingly, Southside has some lakefront property, right? And it's blue. So you have African Americans here, you have Caucasian community here, and then African Americans here on the West Side. All right. Now, one more city, and we're going to talk about. Now, this one obviously is showing the name, but Shamika, you're there in Atlanta. Tell us a little bit about Atlanta.
Well, you know, a lot of people think Atlanta is the Mecca for Black folks. And in some ways it certainly is, but it's also a city that has some of the greatest income disparities in the country. And then Atlanta is also, you got your pockets, right? That's right.
South of Atlanta, South Atlanta is going to be mostly African American.
Primarily African American. And
Clayton County, and down that way.
Areas where it is not, they have now been incorporated into their own cities. So North Fulton, for example, North Atlanta, primarily was primarily Caucasian, and now have separated from the city of Atlanta, its own municipality.
Yeah, that's crazy. So then on top of that, North Atlanta, Alpharetta, Duluth,
Johns Creek,
all those areas, you're gonna see red up here, which is primarily white. Now, what we're going to get into tonight is that this didn't just happen by chance. This wasn't happenstance. It wasn't just folks was like, oh, I like Southeast DC, or I like Southside Chicago or Westside Chicago, or I like being in Alpharetta or in Clayton County. No, there's a historical reality behind it. We're going to unpack that just a little bit, and I'm going to start with Bobby, who just hopped on, just to talk a little bit about, we're going to talk about some history, but specifically about the 13th Amendment. A lot of people have seen this documentary, but this amendment is probably the beginning of where we're seeing the racialization outside of slavery itself, racialization and the policies that shape our nation in terms of racial trauma. Now, Bobby, talk to us about 13th, and then I'll turn to Coach for something else here.
Mm-hmm.
I think Bob might have stepped away.
Bobby ran off.
He's on. I can hear him. Can't.
I cannot hear him.
Yeah, I can't see him either.
You can't see or hear him?
Nope.
Oh man, he's talking good stuff too.
He's breaking that bad boy down to himself.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and let Coach do the 13th Amendment. Let him unpack that just a little bit. Go ahead, Coach.
Okay. All right. So the 13th Amendment. What America realizes is that the Civil War is inevitably going to win. It's going to end. And the North know that they are going to win. And so the radical Republicans come up with the idea and the concept that if they're going to end slavery, now's the time to end it before the South comes back. So the plan is to put forth the 13th Amendment to end slavery. However, in the context that the 13th Amendment is written, it really didn't end slavery because the 13th Amendment, of course, has the exception. And that exception is as a punishment for a crime. Bobby, I see you in right now. You want to hop in and take it from there?
Yeah. So an entrepreneurial guy down in Alabama decides to start utilizing that clause and begins a process called convict leasing. He is in the steel industry, and he begins to work with a prison in order to get prisoners to come work in his steel industry. So it becomes very popular. They start not just leasing convicts, or I hate the word convicts, leasing incarcerated persons. They started using it in other industries, the cotton industry, all of the agricultural industries, lumber. They even started exporting them to other states in order to utilize their labor for free in order to build capital within their particular industries. So when they started building laws in order to continue to get more and more convicted persons, a lot of those laws were just bull jive laws. Loitering became a felony. Not having a job became a felony. Not moving from one place to another without having a designated place that you're going became a felony. And they were just basically snatching people off the street, convicting them of law violations, and then putting them back on plantations.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely true. I mean, I'm sorry. I was just going to say the Civil War ends, and a lot of people are looking for their families. So, of course, they're not employed at the time, but they're going from city to city, and they're learning from people, where's my son? Where's my daughter? So imagine searching for your family. And in that search for your family, because you do not have a job, they are literally going to round you up, throw you in chains, and place you back on the same plantation in which you were supposed to be freed from to be locked up again.
Yeah, I think that's very important, and we're gonna circle back to that convict leasing piece with respect to Glynn County. I need y'all to understand the connection that we're about to make here. Okay, but Bobby alluded to these black codes that have happened all over the country around this time, where there are laws that are put in place to fulfill the requirements of the 13th Amendment, thereby just basically recreating the conditions of slavery post emancipation, post-emancipation. So a couple of these, one from South Carolina said, no person shall migrate into the state of South Carolina unless within 20 days that person shall enter into a bond with 2 freeholders as sureties. So basically, you can't come into our state unless you decide that you're going to become a slave in South Carolina again. Bobby mentioned vagrancy law. They had that in Mississippi. You see this here. It says, if you're a vagrant, if you're unemployed and without permanent residence. Well, duh, I'm no longer a slave. So I ain't going to have a job, or I'm not going to have a permanent residence. And we're going to talk about those housing codes as well. And then the other piece in Louisiana that was crazy was that someone cannot carry a firearm who's a Negro, African American. Now, we're going to make that connection because there is a Black Panther conversation that needs to happen around firearms in this country that is very important, right? Shamika, you got anything you want to add there?
Not yet.
Okay, all right, good. So, Bobby, once the Black codes are enacted, we're moving into Jim Crow era, right? Post. So then what happens there?
So Jim Crow era, now you have those codes are more codified. They're more entrenched in laws across the region. And people try to isolate Jim Crow just to the South. However, those laws were picked up in places that never had legalized slavery. So when you talk about a place like Oklahoma and the Tulsa riots, that was a segregated city. So it's the legal segregation of peoples, and then you're breaking the law if you attempt to integrate in any way into white culture. So that means schools, restaurants, buses, water fountains. All of these things become a part of a kind of national law that gets adopted in other places around the country where there's no intermingling of Black folks and white folks.
Anything to add there, Coach?
That law then horribly impacts the culture of America. This is the idea of separation, the idea of being apart, the idea of not being brought together, not coming together, treating people, a group of people as second-class citizens. It then becomes ingrained in American culture. And it's so American, as someone mentioned before, racism is so American, to protest it seems un-American. And so those laws then became part of our culture. And those laws are passed down to our kids, and those habits are then passed down to their kids. And it became ingrained in our culture, and it disrupted our everyday way of life.
Yeah. And to Bobby's point, this isn't just the South, right? Richmond, California, Palo Alto, California, Austin, Texas. All of these cities, I only showed just a few that were around the country. But if you look at most cities, you're going to see that same map, same features, because even the progressive cities that we see now, they even had some of these codes that really disenfranchised Black people across the board. And that's very important for us to realize.
Absolutely. And the Tulsa race riots wasn't a big anomaly. There were many riots across the country. It happened in many cities across the country in which African Americans became very affluent and they started to build their communities up. We saw it happen, unfortunately, right down the road in Florida in Rosewood. But there are many communities, when they are segregated, that are going to be attacked when they start to reach real success. And so not only are you segregated, you try to make the best of you can, out of the situation of being segregated. So you work hard to build up your family, to build up your land, to build up your investment. And when you finally achieve the American dream, you have this whole other neighborhood that is jealous or want to take over or want your land, which what happened in Tulsa. You had a community that did not want to sell. They wanted to continue to be owners, and they were just looking for a reason. And so you do all you can, you know, as a man, as a woman, to build up your wealth in your community. And these segregated neighborhoods, man, they came from other neighborhoods and just destroyed that wealth that we had in those neighborhoods.
Yeah, and I would add that we also started to see the creation of public systems at this time, incorporating Black folks into service. And so traditionally you had these systems that were providing aid to families, particularly to widowed white women whose husbands had gone off to war, then start to integrate into Black neighborhoods, into Black families. But rather than sort of giving aid, it started to become conditions as to how families morally should be together. And so Black women started to get scrutinized for being unwed, or services started to be targeted as only being provided to Black women without having Black men in the home. The men had to be out of the home if they were unwed to qualify for aid. So that's when you start to see how Black folks disproportionately get involved in systems, particularly child welfare system and foster care systems, as the ending of the Jim Crow era was happening.
Yeah, which ultimately devolved into Reaganomics, welfare queen
Absolutely.
language that really has done a disservice to the African American community, because people take these caricatures, and as we saw on social media posts the other day, they go to extremes, and then when they're called for it, it's a problem, right? When they call out on it, it's an issue, right? So
yeah, it's always weird. It's always weird because I'm sorry, I was just gonna say it's always weird because then they become the victim somehow. That always happens in those cases. Like, how are you now the victim? You just did something extremely rude, distasteful, and horrible and disrespectful, but now you're the victim. And so that's just weird. I'm sorry, John. I didn't mean to throw that out there like that. I'm trying to.
No, it's the truth, man. No, ain't no maintenance, because
you throw the rock and then hide your hand. Nah, like
you're still being gracious by giving a baseline behavior of risk being rude. So,
right. It wasn't even just rude. It was flat. It's flat out disrespectful. I mean, he called you out your name. This dude did, and like I literally had to go on that post and be like, "Bruh, that ain't what we doing today." Like, for real. And the poise that you responded with. Here's the thing: Black folks always have to keep poise in these situations, and that's the part that makes me upset. Like, why do we have to be the ones that are poised?
And that is social conditioning. That is the social conditioning of all of the trauma from slavery to the Jim Crow era. It's you have to maintain a disposition that doesn't make you seem to be a threat.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you do anything to the contrary, you're disrupting unity in the community.
Right.
Yeah. Whereas unity basically means you need to assimilate and sit your passive Black behind down.
Yeah, just be
if
quiet.
We're talking right tonight.
Shut up and dribble.
Right.
That's one of the first arguments I have, because I teach African American studies. And so one of the first arguments I have that I present to my students is, why do we use the term African American? Why can't we all be Americans? And the first thing I tell them is, when you say that you're African American, you are from a culture. You are from a group of people. You have a history. You have a past, and that's why you're African American. It should never ever be a place to where we destroy cultures like this country has in the past. African Americans and Native Americans. That should never be the norm. So if like I said at the beginning of the class, if we just say that we all Americans, now you're throwing out all this culture and all this history from different races of people. If we're all Americans, what music we're gonna listen to? I mean, country cool, you know what I'm saying? But I gotta play my Rick Ross when I'm saying, I'm getting my mind right. Or you know what I'm saying, little baby. You know what I'm saying? If we're all Americans, what we eating on? Because I don't eat everybody potato salad. You know what I'm saying?
Now you're talking about how whiteness was created. It was the dissolve of those cultures, no longer French, no longer Dutch, no longer English, We're going to pull you all in, and not just into one culture. We're going to codify it. We're going to make it law. And then we're going to commodify it. We're going to make it profitable for you to claim this status. So much so that when other people come into this country, they're going to want your status, which is why there are Supreme Court cases of people from India, from Japan, attempting to break into whiteness. The Syrians became white in 1909, according to a federal court case. And all of these people trying to break into what? Break into whiteness. And even now, you look at your census, and what does it say?
That's right. The census.
Non-white.
That's right.
The American dream is the pursuit of whiteness.
That's right.
And that's the dream that many Black people do not want to attain. The Korematsu case versus United States. This case is about a Japanese American born here. And these Japanese folks were taken to internment camps after Pearl Harbor. This man went so far as getting plastic surgery to become white so they would not take him to the concentration camp. They still took him because of his name. But he pursued whiteness by doing plastic surgery, hoping that that would alleviate the issue. And he found out that he wound up in the concentration camp. So the other day when I mentioned us trying to figure out how to best educate African-American men and women, especially clergy members, I'm not throwing shade against white institutions. I'm just trying to push back on the pursuit of whiteness in all the endeavors as the default and normative in America, while ignoring the narrative of African-American people in various spaces who have tremendously had impact in America or input in America despite being oppressed here in this country.
Absolutely.
I know we're not talking about that, but I mean, I think it's very important for us to unpack that just a little bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it goes as far as housing, right?
I was about to say it connects. Yeah, go ahead.
It connects here. I mean, it's supposed to say Civil Rights Act 1964. We all know that that's the date. We just had the wrong date there. But 4 years after that, Fair Housing Act 1968 is passed. Days after King's assassination. So that act was meant to appease the Black folks, to say, hey, we're going to be more fair in our housing, i.e. Juneteenth legislation.
Talk about it.
I hope y'all seeing these connections. Like, they passed this Juneteenth legislation. Folks all happy about it. But on the other side of it, we got CRT, anti-CRT.
There's no police reform laws passed.
Right.
But white folks can take off.
But here's the thing you got to understand when passing the Fair Housing Act. Here's what you got to understand. Our soldiers did not get the GI Bill. So you can tell them they can live in this Levitt house, which African Americans could not live in Levitt houses. So you can sell them this American dream, but you didn't give them equal access. These men went out and risked their lives during World War II and fought and everything else, and they did not come back to the same America as everyone else. They did not get the GI Bills. They did not get those loans to be able to afford the houses to even live into those neighborhoods and those communities. So you got people who have passed down land since the 1940s and 50s that they never had to work for. People were afforded the right to have the GI Bill. So they got these houses and they got all this land. I see it all around me all the time. And they had the opportunity to pass those down, and we were not afforded those opportunities. And then people look at African Americans like, oh man, why don't y'all have better neighborhoods? We didn't get the loans y'all got. I had to say we have to wait for y'all to be finished with those neighborhoods before we can move in. Just personally speaking, John, you know about me, you know about Mom in College Park right here in Brunswick, Georgia. The Brunswick, Georgia College Park.
Wait. You telling our business now.
Uh-oh.
No, I'm playing. Go ahead. No, go ahead. I'm just messing with you.
No, we good. And so so right here in College Park, my mother moved in as the second African American family in College Park. when she would come home from her long days of nursing, taking care of people 14, 16 hours, 12 to 14 hours a day, the neighbors would leave like little black dolls on the mailbox to to basically try to intimidate her. It did not work. Other African American families moved in, and as the neighborhood became more African American, there was this big, flight away from College Park. And they kind of just left that neighborhood to us. Yeah. Same thing happened to Beverly Shores, Fairway Oaks, and different neighborhoods like that. And so, like I said, we weren't afforded these same opportunities. So we had to wait for them to be finished with those neighborhoods before we were able to move into those Levitt houses.
And
so the crazy thing about it is over since the turn of the 20th century, African Americans have lost 90% of their land that they had in 1900.
That's right, farming land.
So not only could we not get into homes, that which we had was being stolen. So much so that the first successful lawsuit against the federal government, Pickford v. Glickman, settled in 1999. So when you see the billions of dollars that are in the American Rescue Plan for Black farmers, that's a part of that lawsuit.
Right.
We're not talking about 1901. We're not talking about 1908. We're not 100 years away. We're talking about the turn of the 21st century.
Right.
Just
and you have the backlash, right? You have the backlash that comes with the progress in legislation. So even with the GI Bill, the backlash from that is the redlining, right? So we move into the neighborhood gets undervalued, and so the wealth doesn't grow. The same thing with the farming, right? Like this lawsuit happened, but it was unfunded. People weren't even given information to get access to the funds. So every level of progression that we make, there's this intentional backlash, right? Whitewash, some have called it.
It's like, it's like they just keep moving the end zone. Every time I'm a football coach. Every time we get a first down, they just keep moving the end zone. All right, so you're gonna look out, and like Bobby said, it wasn't a long time ago. I mean, it's a lawsuit right now where African American farmers were not given the right seeds for crops. They gave them subpar seeds, so their crops didn't grow. And then they blamed African Americans for not being good farmers, something they did and passed down to their family. Like, oh, y'all just not good farmers. No, they did the testing. All right, we have scientists now. All right, they did the testing. Y'all gave them horrible seeds, and their farmland did not produce crop. And then when their farmland failed, you bought their farmland. Constantly moving the goalposts.
So when that particular case goes to the Supreme Court, you know what the Supreme Court says? Well, you guys take that to mediation. Take that to mediation.
Right. So I think that's also the crazy part, though, because historically in our country, Black people have always taken what was subpar and made it superb. Can y'all just imagine if we were given from the jump the equal access, equal rights to all the things that others in this nation have been given access to, how far along not just the Black community would be, but our nation would be. Because I always say this, a rising tide lifts all ships. But for some reason, this entire pursuit of whiteness has really become ingrained in our culture. I mean, so much so that African-American home ownership is still subpar. And the primary means of wealth building in this country is what?
Home ownership.
That's your biggest investment.
And I want to make that connection to education, right? Like make that connection to education. When they start to change laws that says that our education system is funded by home ownership, funded by taxes that come through home ownership, right? And then you connect taxes to the value of your land or the value of your home, and you also undermine that. You also impact our ability for our kids to succeed educationally,
Mm. Yeah.
At what point can you state that you're providing a fair education if you're not providing the same amount of funding? How's that a fair education? You're providing a poor education to poor neighborhoods, and while at the same time providing a very rich education to rich neighborhoods.
To affluent. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
And
which is why they build prisons based on 4th grade testing.
That's right. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Those prisons are built in those areas, right? They've already identified where they need to be in order to get the population. And
I think it's key to know that, like, underperformance in schools is primarily driven by under-resourcing, intentional under-resourcing in the school system. If you look at underperforming schools, you're going to see that they're severely resource-strapped, and this goes back to the separate but equal facilities conversation, right? Even though we've integrated schools, we've still segregated them practically in a practical means, so that the resources go to the schools that are in white affluent communities, but the schools that are in African American communities don't have the resources, don't have the teachers that are going to pour into the students, and the teachers are frustrated because they don't have what they need to be able to pour into the students. So this cycle continues and leads to that school to prison pipeline. That school to prison pipeline is where, like, boys, hey, your behavior problems, we're going to put you in this special program, and that program ultimately leads to prison. Nowhere else but prison. And I'll be honest with y'all, they tried to do that with my son in suburban Illinois, in Chicago, because he was smart, got finished early. They were trying to consider him a behavior problem, and we went to the school and behaved badly, me and his mom, and changed that entire narrative. But you don't always have that, because you don't have parents that have the time to do that, to go into the school system and do that. So how many more Black and brown kids are experiencing that? Now we're in this entire cycle of Black people not being able to thrive. So that history is important. It's super important.
I just gotta say one thing to that. They get groomed for incarceration. When you start putting children in school suspension and isolating them, you are grooming them for a life of incarceration.
And there are studies that say that training begins in preschool.
That's right.
It begins, and they've done the eye test where the teachers, white, Black, brown, all of them, will always train their eyes to look more closely at the big Black boy.
The darker skinned children, absolutely.
Right. So you're already under a surveillance system as a preschool kid. You're not free to just be a kid.
Yeah. And Dominique is saying Black students are overly disciplined. We see that all the time, right? Now we've talked about the history. Go ahead, historian. Sorry.
No, I was just saying, I was putting my teacher hat on for a second to agree with Dominique by all the data. That is so true. One of the things about being an African-American teacher in a system where there are not a lot of African-American teachers, I am the only African-American male that teaches a core subject at my high school of over 1,800 kids. And so with my African-American studies class, we have conversations like this where we're just open. And my students can tell you the teachers who over-discipline African-American students. And when they tell me that information, I kind of go to those teachers and I kind of talk to them, and have that little coach to teacher talk to them, like, hey, maybe we should start seeing all students as being the same, because it happens so often that it is the norm. And students tell stories and their stories connect, and they talk about being in a class where they may be speaking, but there's another whole group speaking also. And they will be the ones that the teachers would really the teacher just really harp on and jump on and everything else and just kind of get down their throat about it. Whereas the other group, they'll speak more politely. They'll speak more gently. And that's because they identify with the other group a lot more. Are discipline measures always equally distributed? No, it's not. And so our students also see that. And so that's one thing I try to do in my African American studies class. I try to give them a sense of pride of what it means to be African American, knowing that it comes with a struggle, knowing that you're not going to be seen the same, knowing that you're not going to be treated the same, but still being able to overcome and ultimately to change the system. And that's why I go to bat for so many of my students, so many different times, and so many different instances, because I have the privilege of also coaching football. And our football team is a lot more diverse than it's ever been before, especially our coaching staff. And so even our coaching staff is starting to identify, like, dang, Vaughn, I see what you're talking about now. I'm like, yes, they don't get treated the same. But me being me, I have no problem calling those teachers out and talking to them like, hey, you took my football player phone. That's cool. He shouldn't have had it out. That's fine. You're sitting in a referral. Now, here's what I'm gonna do. I got third block. I'm gonna sit in here and make sure none of my football players have their phones. And if any other of your students have their phones out, I want to make sure that you take their phones also, and that they get the same referral too. Oh well, it's because he had his phone out a couple of times. Nah, cool. I'm gonna help you out. I'm going to be your helper. I'll be in your classroom, and I'm going to help you out. Oh no, I can talk and take back the referral. Exactly. Yeah. Let's treat all our students the same.
But the fact that you have to advocate in that way is both disheartening and troubling, because it should not be that way. And that's what we're going to talk about now, talk about the present reality. Because a lot of people feel like, oh, all that oppression, that was in the past. Y'all should get over it. Everybody pull yourself up by the bootstraps and make it happen. But us being members of a Better Glynn and knowing what's going on in Glynn County and in Brunswick, we see the present reality. We see what's happening in Glynn County. We see the disparities that keep us up. I mean, our text thread continues throughout the day with issues that we see all over the city. And one of the things I think we all recognize is the disparity, income disparity, education disparity across the county, across the city of Brunswick, that folks don't want to acknowledge. That's step one, acknowledge. If you're not acknowledging it, then you ain't gonna do nothing about it. But the frustration is, how do y'all get people to acknowledge this? Or do you even care? Do you just do the work and say, forget it, they ain't never gonna acknowledge it? We just gonna get the work done. I'm asking y'all an insider's question now.
Oh, can I take it first?
I'll talk about me. Go ahead, Vaughn.
Oh, let me just take it first, because I know y'all gonna have some phenomenal and educated answers. Brother, sister, let me tell y'all this, family. Let me tell y'all this. I am done explaining. I tell people all the time, if you want more information, hit my PayPal up. I get paid to teach. I'm not teaching you that's ignorant. You know that's ignorant. I get paid to teach. Hit the PayPal, player. You want more information? How is that racist? Hit the PayPal, player. You know how it's racist. I am done explaining myself to you. I'm telling you, I'm done. I am done. Don't run up on me in no stove and ask me what I'm doing. No, I don't need help. No, I don't. Do you need help? When I walk in my neighborhood, don't ask me if I live out here. Do you live out here? I'm done. I ain't explaining nothing. Where your ID at? I ain't explaining nothing. Hit the PayPal.
Hit my the fault. PayPal. Hashtag.
My fault.
Wow. Okay, Bobby.
For me, I don't worry about changing people. I don't worry about changing the culture, because I know the system built the culture. If I work hard to change the system and I continue to make inroads in changing the system, the culture will follow. Because the segregation of peoples, I'll tell people all the time, I'm pro-labor, right? So the segregation of labor was what began the segregation of people. When you started to segregate white from black in 1677. Why did they do that? Because they understood that a unified, I'm gonna use a scary word, a unified proletariat is a danger
Whoa,
to the bourgeois.
That's a big word. You need to define proletariat for people.
All it means is the rich ruling class. That's it. There's a select few people that run everything. Now, I'm not talking about people behind the scenes. I'm not talking about any kind of a boogeyman behind the curtain. I'm talking about the people that you know their names. Do you know Jeff Bezos' name? Bourgeoisie. Do you know Bill Gates' name? Bourgeoisie. Rich ruling class. Because you want to know how they're the rich ruling class that determines how everything is? Because Jeff Bezos can have a group of laborers attempting to unionize in Bessemer, Alabama, and he can pay the police to police their vote. He can put surveillance on them voting. He can pay his managers to sow seeds of discord among the employees. Why? So he can continue to destabilize the labor class. That's all this is about.
Bobby, listen, you're not going to be messing with my Amazon Prime now. I ain't messing around with you. Ain't nobody messing with you tonight. Nobody messing with you tonight. You ain't messing with my Amazon Prime, brother. Next day, same day, sometime. Hey, Shamika, I know you got the kumbaya answer that's going to help us connect with our brothers and sisters who might not quite understand. I know you got the kumbaya answer. I got activist Vaughn over here and just anti-proletariat Henderson over here. I need some help. Shamika. Help me, please.
I mean, honestly, it does depend on the day. There are days where I'm like, I'm not teaching people. Access to information is too readily available. But I am also a system change person, and people make the system. The systems are made up of people, and those people are made up of their values. And so I think that there is some piece of this work that we have to do that appeals to people's hearts and minds in order to shift the culture that Bobby was speaking to. Now, once I have educated you and have given you my take on my experience and the experience of people that look like me, I will give a little tolerance to that. But after that, you still choose not to do anything different, then I know it's a choice, right? And I think that particularly we've been forced to continue to reconcile with our history and our present. And I don't see that white folks have been called to reconcile with that. So as much as we talk about our history, they have a role in that, right? Like they have a legacy of mass murder. They have a legacy of that. And so when I say appeal to hearts and minds, it's not just to talk about how it's impacted us, but to really call people to the table and say, what must it feel like for you if they're natural born Americans, if they've been raised here, because you'll get that, my grandparents wasn't here, they didn't own slaves, you'll get that whole situation. You'll get that whole rebuttal. But if they were born here in the United States and they have lineage here, then I think we have to start to flip our conversations with how do you reconcile that is a part of your history? And how does that manifest presently? And what systems do you work for that you're making decisions about people where that might be impacting the inequities?
And Shamika, that's one of the reasons why we speak about the present, that we decided we were going to sit on this monument committee. You and I could have been doing anything else with our time, but we felt it was important for other folks who are on the committee to sit in that history and to sit with two people who are descendants of slaves to have a conversation about a monument that they are calling a heritage honoring monument, when we are clearly pointing out the historical realities of oppression tied to some anonymous monument that ain't even got a name on it that you're holding on to hold on to your heritage. And we endured a lot during that conversation, but we wanted the folks in the city to know that this is still a present reality in our city, and your neighbor has this mentality, your coworker has this mentality, folks who are attending sporting events with you, They like to see you run that ball.
You over here worshiping beside them, passing the Bible back and forth to each other.
At the church house, right. And coach, coach as a coach of local sports, they like seeing us run that ball, but don't get out of line otherwise. So once we understand those realities, I think we can start to work towards the future that we envision is better. And that's what A Better Glynn is all about, working towards of equity as we realize that the past shapes the present, but we want to be able to shape the future through the work that we're doing. And sometimes they're going to get it. It's okay. Sometimes they won't get it. But guess what? That ain't going to stop the work.
That's right.
We don't care if you don't get it. It's too important for people in our community to know that there are people that are advocating for them and advocating for equity. You can make me to be out of boogeyman. You can make anybody on our team to be boogie persons, being inclusive here. But I'm gonna tell y'all this now: we ain't gonna stop. Now let's talk about the future, because the reason why we're having this conversation is because June 19th is around the corner. Now, baby brother, tell them a little bit about Juneteenth, and then we're going to talk about what we're doing in the future to help shape or reshape the narrative.
All right. So I'm going to hit you with a quick history of Juneteenth. 13th Amendment is passed on January 31st of 1865, which should have freed all enslaved persons. But we know that the Civil War is still going on until April. The Civil War ends in April, and so the Confederate terrorists surrender to the American Army, which is, I'm sorry, I messed up.
You own one tonight, bro.
My fault. Don't let nobody see this. We're gonna delete this one. I didn't know what I don't know.
No.
People
proceed.
to take over America. My fault. And so I'm sorry. State capital. All right, so my fault. So essentially, all enslaved people should have been free. We should have birthed a new nation. Unfortunately, that did not happen. The state of Texas, which geographically is so isolated, the slave holders, gosh, and I hate that term, but the plantation owners refused to allow those people to go free. And because they were so isolated from Texas, they essentially continued on slavery. It wasn't until General Grange brought his army all the way to Galveston, Texas, and rolled up and pretty much threatened to, start battles again in Texas, that they then surrendered. He brought the order. He brought Order 3, which essentially ended slavery and basically told Texas, hey, look, we ended slavery across the country. You now have to follow this order and end slavery. And so the reason that we celebrate Juneteenth is that we're not free until we're all free. In April, when the 13th Amendment was passed, you got celebrations across the country. Matter of fact, the first Memorial Day happens in May of the same year. So you got celebrations of Jubilee going across the countries. Everybody's celebrating, everybody's feeling good. And then African Americans get the word that their brothers and sisters are still in chains. So imagine being African American, knowing what you went through slavery-wise, and to know that your brothers and sisters in Texas are still enduring that. And so the celebrations in April kind of came to a stop. We had our Jubilee, we celebrated, we were having a good time until we heard about Texas. And it's not until General Grange goes into Texas and personally deliver Order 3 that we are free. So on June 19th, that's when we all are, essentially free. That's when all those chains are broken. And those people in Texas is the last slave-holding state in our union. And when they deliver those orders on June 19th, it's a day of celebration. I couldn't imagine the feeling that our nation felt on on June 19th. You know, former slaves, you know, no longer having to endure what they had to endure. Even the Union soldiers themselves, those Euro-Americans who fought and risked their lives, and, you know, their brothers and sons died. This is now the completion of their dream. This is now the completion of their toil. This is now, you know, this is now that victory for them too. So it's a victory for America. So I absolutely love what we're doing here in Brunswick. We're about to have a big Juneteenth celebration when we are all free. And so our celebration is going to be at the Selden Park, which has a ton of history on.
Selden Park, ton of history.
Saturday, Juneteenth, from, oh, my fault, Selden Park, 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. It's going to be a ton of history going on. The McIntosh Shouters are going to be there. And if you have not seen the culture that they passed on, you do not want to miss 1 o'clock with the McIntosh Shouters. We got a great organization. The Brunswick Tigers are bringing this thing together. They do great things with our youth in our community. They coach sports, yes, they do, but they also have after-school tutoring and studying program. So the Brunswick Tigers are putting this thing together, Selden Park, from 12 to 4. I'll be there speaking, telling them about Juneteenth. But it's just going to be a great celebration in our community. You know, we're going to party like it was Juneteenth, 1865 for real. You know, we're going to have a good time. It's going to be music out there, DJs out there. It's going to be everything our ancestors wanted us to do. It's going to be everything our ancestors wanted in our lives, you know, to be able to freely exist, to be able to freely have a great time. So we're not just doing this for us. We're doing this for our ancestors. We're doing this for everybody that was in chains. Right. We're doing this for everybody that fought for freedom, you know, both African-American and Euro-American. You know, we doing this for the 54th Massachusetts who risked their lives coming down here in the South, the free folks. We doing this for them. Selden Park, 12 to 4. It's going to be some vendors out there. Go ahead, you know, so come out there and get you some good food and just celebrate with great people. It's Juneteenth. We're going to have a good time.
So you said something, Burton, I want to make sure I lock in on. You said we ain't free until we all free.
That's right.
That's exactly what A Better Glynn is about.
That's right.
That we still got some folks who are in Texas that need to hear this freedom message, and we can't quite all the way celebrate until we all are free. So y'all go to the event. The event is important. You got to celebrate along the way, but let me tell y'all, we all ain't free. There's some people that still need to hear this, still need to be liberated, who are still oppressed. And Shamika is going to help us understand that distinction between oppression and liberation, and why the future of fighting for freedom helps people to see that distinction.
Yes, this started off from an interesting sort of thread too that John got started this week. But
why are you blaming me?
You did it. But it was really about, you know, speaking about systematic oppression, right? And we've talked a lot about some of that already. We talked about the education system. We've talked about the incarceration system. We've talked about, you know, housing. All of those things are the systematic ways in which folks have been oppressed. And particularly when we think about in the city of Brunswick, where we make up 56% of the population, the poverty rate for Black folks is 36%. So over half of the population of Black folks in the city of Brunswick are living in poverty. And that poverty is not as a result of the narrative that just people are not working, right? That poverty is a result of low wages. That poverty is a result of unaffordable housing. That poverty is a result of limited access to educational opportunities. We can go on and on. Men being taken out of homes and incarcerated, that poverty is for a lot of reasons, right? And so those are the many ways in which we are oppressed systematically as a race. But then there are ways in which we act in that internalized oppression, meaning that we perpetuate the very systems that oppress us. I'm not gonna call people out, but the saying that all skin folk ain't kin folk is absolutely true in this case. There are certain people in positions of power or proximity to power that are making decisions that continually oppress us. That doesn't mean that we have to sit in and operate in that oppression. And to sit in and operate in that oppression means to be silent is a prime example. To literally or figuratively walk to the other side of the street. We were talking about Jim Crow earlier, right? In Jim Crow time, you had to walk. Black folks saw a white person approaching, they walked to the other side of the street. Some of us are literally and figuratively doing that. We see things happening and we walk to the other side of the street because we're trying to keep peace, or we're trying to keep it unified, this concept of unity. We saw that being challenged and questioned as we were doing marching and things last year for our brother Ahmaud. And so to act in that oppression means that you're not free, right? And to be liberated is to have a voice. We all have personal power, and our personal power is our voice, right? We call attention to things that we see need to change, and then a step further after we call attention to it, because you can only shout in the bullhorn, coach, for so long, right? And then some action has to follow it, right? So people get the sense, and the lady called me out and she said, well, I don't see that you're oppressed. You appear to be powerful, strong Black woman, and let me be clear, I'm not. But as a race, there are many opportunities by way of discrimination, many opportunities where as a race and as a gender, I am oppressed, but I don't operate in that oppression, right? Because I stand in my personal power. And so that's really how we talk about how do we become liberated, is to stand in our personal power. And I'll end with this, and the beauty of a better Glynn, and the beauty of even coming together with our brothers and sisters, is our collective power is greater than our own individual power. So to come together collectively is the whole game changer. And so that's my piece on how we completely get liberated in education. So we tease Bobby all the time because Bobby got 1,000 words that mean one word, or one word that can be broken down to 1,000 words. The reality of that is education is liberating, right? If you don't know from which you came, there is no way you know the direction in which you're going. So good. Education and using our voices and using our some action.
You talking good tonight, sis. Talking good tonight. Ooh,
I was ready for that one. I was ready. I was ready for Karen. That's not her name, but I'm gonna call her Karen. I'm ready for Karen.
Ooh. Hey, Bobby. So, Bobby, talk to me about the future of freedom fighting, because you've been at this for a while. We've all been at this for a while. Yeah. What do you see as the future of freedom fighting, specifically county, but just as a whole? We got folks who hold themselves out as doing the work, but what does it look like, man, to be a freedom fighter in this culture?
So I'll talk about an enemy to the fight that doesn't get talked about a lot. And Shamika alluded to it. Jason alluded to it. We have to know our history, and because not knowing the history, you will duplicate things that are detrimental to you without knowing. Hey, that's already been tried and failed, right? So knowing your history means connecting also to experience and the wisdom of our elders, the wisdom of those who have been in this fight, and the wisdom that's contained within books that teaches us how they envision our path forward. What I don't see a lot of is people will watch Judas and the Black Messiah, and they will see Chairman Fred Hampton and say that was a strong brother, and they never hear his message. They never hear his message of unification and disenfranchisement from systems, self-segregation from systems that are detrimental. The plight of the poor should be unified. right? And people would rather they would be educated. And
That's so
that,
good.
so the future has to be, we have to internalize that wisdom and transform into action that is applicable to today. Like the ways and means of yesterday might not be the ways and means of today, but they are the foundation of the ways and means of today. So we have to connect with our history. We have to connect with what is contained in books and the wisdom of elders in order to move forward. We also have to do the hard work of calling out those who are detrimental from within. You'll hear me say the name H.H. Holmes a lot. H.H. Holmes was a reverend and newspaper editor for a newspaper in Mississippi. He was also a spy for the Mississippi Sovereignty Commission. They wanted to keep Mississippi segregated. Well, we have those same agents of white supremacy operating among us today, where they are being paid. They are paid agents to maintain our oppression in order that they might continue to reap the benefit from it. And they don't care that we advance. They just want to continue to keep their pockets fat. I'm going to be a little less than Shamika because I'm gonna like that. I'm going to call out names.
Oh my goodness!
Hit the mute. Hit the mute.
He's not a help.
Who
He's
ain't
an agent of white supremacy.
What name?
You know, and Sean King is an agent of white supremacy. He exploits and profits from black pain. There is nothing that is a part of anything that he does that is forward moving. It is all circular. It is all meant to create emotion around an event, and then he's off to the next thing that creates emotion around an event, and he continues to extract capital from it. Right? We have people.
I told you I was gonna have tea.
He knowingly does it. I'm going to get more local.
Okay.
Unknowingly, people do it by voting to exploit the 13th Amendment exception and use prison labor to do work within our community. When there are
I told y'all we were connected.
There are people who are unemployed, people who could use the skill building. We have a education system that could be employed to give good apprenticeship work, to do the work that you're getting for free because you can exploit the labor, what you call labor, sitting dormant and just soaking up tax dollars. But the fact of the matter is most of the people that are incarcerated locally, they're not even convicted of a crime yet. They are waiting their day in court.
Let's be very specific, Bobby. Commissioner Kaysen, on 2 occasions in 2 separate meetings, has said that they need to use prison labor in lieu of paying people to dig ditches in Brunswick. And he said it in his Kaysen twang. I'm gonna let y'all do what y'all want to with that information, but when I heard it, it goes back to this conversation about the 13th Amendment. The fact that he's looking for ways to exploit black labor for free that's in prison, as opposed to using the city money to give to a local business that could profit from doing work in that context. His exact words were, why can't we get those people from the prisons to come and do this. If you don't
And
feel
that money will not, and further for our capitalist friends who love the dollar, that money won't get fueled back into the city money. Small business money will circulate back into the community. That prison labor, number one, doesn't go to the prisoners. They don't make anything, and it goes to the wardens, and it goes to the whoever the person is that's manning, if you will, the overseer. I'll just be real raw. The overseer of those incarcerated individuals. So economically, it isn't even the best decision in terms of economic development for the city of Brunswick.
That's absolutely the point I was about to make. We got a bunch of we have a bunch of small businesses that could definitely use that money. And once again, that money circulates in our community. But you want to feel like you're better than somebody else, because let me be real. His speech was that Django talk. Y'all need to get out there and dig them ditches. That's his speech. Let me be real. If he don't like me, cool. But that was his speech. I don't care that he wants to be ignorant of what he said. He said he wanted them out there digging them ditches. Like, it gave him great pride to walk by or to drive by and see men who are incarcerated, and some of them not even been convicted, but it gives him great pride to see them out there toiling and laboring for what he quote unquote called free. And it's not free. And it's not. But he said it with so much glee, like he was happy, like it made his heart feel good. Like, where we're going to get him back out there digging them ditches. Nah, homie. No, be real. That you're nasty. That's what you. John, you're supposed to stop. So you messing up.
Hey, listen.
You messing up. You're supposed to stop me.
Listen. Here's the whole point. 12 votes. 12 votes has Commissioner Casey in office. He won that seat by 12 votes. 12 people show up at the Jerk Shack between 12 o'clock and 12:30 to get lunch. So
that is operating within your oppression. That is internalized oppression. That is to internalize the message that your vote and your opinion doesn't matter, so you don't show up anyway.
But here's what I would say
is because you had so many people running for that particular office.
That's part of what I was going to say.
I ain't talking about nothing.
People oftentimes complain about African Americans not voting enough. Well, if you're being involved in a system that's not creating positive change or any change for you, then how involved are you in that system? So when you said African Americans don't vote enough, then you look at the numbers that came out for Obama. You got to give people somebody to believe in, someone that they know they're going to have their best interest, somebody that's going to create change and that is going to change the status quo. If not, like Bobby said, you're going to have division. You're going to have 6 and 7 people running for a position. They have no platform. They have nothing to stand on. And they're going to offer nothing to our community. We got to start getting some visionaries out there, some people with a clear plan out there to positively change our community. If not, people not going to vote for you. They're not. You have no message to them. They're not going to vote for you. Now, 45 found out that people will vote against you.
Whoa. Come on. All right, so listen. Here's what we're going to do. It's 7:15. I feel like I'm at a good stopping place. I'm at a good stopping place here. Now, here's the gist of the message that we are sharing tonight. I think you guys need to know. And that is that freedom ain't free. That freedom is ultimately going to cost you something. It's going to cost you the work. It's going to cost you time. The disappointments are going to cost you relationships. So there's going to be cost to this freedom fighting that we're doing. But we wanted to make sure that we took June 17th to lift up the past, talk about the present so that we can move towards the future and do this future work that we know is important. So we want you all to go ahead and continue to follow A Better Glynn. Y'all might see some of these t-shirts on some of our future videos, because we like creating t-shirts and merch that really resonate with our message and with who we are. And we're looking forward to talking with y'all more in the future in these coastal conversations. We felt like this one was super important for us. Y'all got any parting words from each of y'all? Minute or two, what y'all got?
I just want to say that accolades need to go to Miss Opal, who has been leading this fight for Juneteenth to be passed. I know folks might want to give credit to President Biden, and this is no slight, but Black folk, as always, we've been putting in work. So when you think about Saturday and hanging out, you think about Miss Opal, who's our elder, who was walking the streets, protesting, sometimes by herself to get this holiday passed. So let's lift her up.
Shout out Miss Opal. That's good. Bobby?
The views reflected on this broadcast do reflect ABG. This is who we are. That's how I explain it. You want to know why we do this work? You heard it on here tonight. You know, I continue to say that we are Black led. We are not Black only. Like John said before, rising tide lifts all boats. We do this work from a Black experience. There's an actual racial caste system in this country, and Black people are at the bottom. So if you fix the bottom, you fix it everywhere else. So when we continue to do this work and you hear us lifting up Blackness and lifting up Black people, know that the beneficiaries of this work are not just Black people.
That's right.
That's good.
That's right.
That's good. All right, Coach, you recovered.
Yeah. I see y'all cut me out of the broadcast, but that's cool. I bounced back. I got the cold.
Nobody cut you off. You popped off. I don't know what happened.
Nah. I know what you did. I got the cold though. You ain't think I was coming back. You ain't think I got the cold. When you got the cold, you good. I came back. What I want to say is just two things, because I always leave people with action, things to take as far as action. My brother will not let me use the word actionary things because it's not in the dictionary yet, but it will be. So here are two very real action items that we can do locally and that we can do globally. Just speaking, locally, Saturday, the historic Selden Park, a park that was established for African Americans. Saturday, Selden Park, 12 to 4. You do not want to miss that. Please be there. Saturday, 12 to 4. The Brunswick Tigers are putting together a great Juneteenth, a great celebration Saturday. All right. And so our global action, buy the merchandise. People might not like what's on that shirt, but you do not have to explain yourself. If they want answers, tell them to PayPal me. Buy your merch. Wear your merch. You ain't got to answer nobody questions. Buy the merch. Wear it. You're going to make some people upset. They'll be okay. It ain't none of their business. If they want to know what's on there, tell them to PayPal me. I'll drop PayPal later on. But you ain't got to explain nothing. Buy the merch, support the cause, and we're going to keep creating positive change. Buy the merch. PayPal me. You ain't got to explain nothing.
Maybe refer them to the website. That might
Yes. If you go to abetterglynn.org, you can find our merch store. You can find where you may be able to donate to our efforts. We really are just trying to create a better community, y'all. I know that we definitely tonight, we certainly went deep in terms of the underlying issues, but we have been seeing incremental change in our community, and it's partly because of your support and your donations. Your support volunteering with us, you buying, rocking the merch, any way that you can hop into this fight with us, because we know it's a fight. Because listen, we ain't all free until we all free. So make sure that we are working towards that end. Hop in any way you can with the Better Glynn. We appreciate you guys. I know now I gotta go and feed my family before I get in trouble. I appreciate y'all. Love y'all. Shamika, Bobby, Coach, y'all have an amazing Juneteenth. Have a great Father's Day, fellas. Hope
That's
y'all
right.
get more than
Happy
church
Father's
socks.
Day.
Happy Father's Day, fellas.
Yes.
All right.
Bad shirt.
Appreciate y'all for joining us.
Okay.
All right.